Today let us learn the anastomosis of body of scapula and also the anastomosis around the acromion process. So first we'll start with anastomosis of body of scapula. So there are mainly, if you see, the three arteries are participating in the anastomosis of body of scapula. So the first artery which is participating in the anastomosis of body of scapula is the first part of subclavian artery. The first part of subclavian artery is called thyrocervical trunk. From the thyrocervical trunk, mainly we get the two branches of arteries which are playing a major role in the anastomosis of body of scapula. The first artery is the suprascapular artery and the second artery is the transverse cervical artery. So the suprascapular artery, transverse cervical artery are forming an anastomosis over here. So among the three arteries, we have got to know about the two arteries which are directly coming from the first part of subclavian artery. So the third part is coming from the third part of axillary artery. So actually axillary artery is divided into three parts: the first part, the second part and the third part. From the third part of axillary artery, you get a artery which is playing a role over here. That artery is nothing but the circumflex scapular artery. That circumflex scapular artery is in turn a branch of subscapular artery, and this subscapular artery is arising from the third part of axillary artery. So this is so simple. So the body of scapula have anastomosis of three arteries. Among those three arteries, two arteries are coming from the first part of subclavian artery and the one more artery is coming from the third part of axillary artery. So the two arteries which are coming from the first part of subclavian artery are also called as thyrocervical trunk are the suprascapular artery and the transverse cervical artery. And the third artery which is coming from the third part of axillary artery is the subscapular artery. This subscapular artery gives a circumflex scapular artery which takes its part in the anastomosis around the body of scapula. So we have understood the anastomosis around body of scapula. Now let us move on to the anastomosis around the acromion process. So if you see, in the anastomosis around the acromion process, the first one which is coming is also coming from the again the first part of subclavian artery. So it's nothing but the suprascapular artery's acromion branch. So the suprascapular artery acromion branch only participates in the acromion process anastomosis. So we have got the one artery which is coming from the first part of subclavian artery or the thyrocervical trunk. And the second artery which is coming, you can observe it's coming from the second part of axillary artery. The second part of axillary artery is called Thoraco acromial artery or acromiothoracic artery. So the same thing, Thoraco acromial artery. So it is the second part of axillary artery. That thoraco acromial artery has its acromial branch. So that acromial branch of thoraco acromial artery also participate in the anastomosis around the acromion process of scapula. Right. Next, if you observe, there is one more artery which is coming from the third part of axillary artery. That is called as the acromion part of posterior circumflex humeral artery. So it's nothing but the acromial branch of posterior circumflex humeral artery. So these three are nothing but they are the acromial branches. They form the anastomosis around acromion. So once again let us recall it. Very simple. First you have a major artery, right, to form a anastomosis around either body of scapula or either the acromion process. So first the artery is a subclavian artery near to the clavicle bone, and next it converts into axillary artery which is near to the axilla, and next it converts into brachial artery which is near to the arm. So according to the location the artery name is changing, but the artery itself is same. It is a single same artery but the name is changing according to the location. So the first part of subclavian artery is in turn divided into three parts, but in that three parts the first part is called thyrocervical trunk. From the thyrocervical trunk you will get the two branches. One is the suprascapular artery, and other one is the transverse cervical artery. So the suprascapular artery also participates in anastomosis around body of scapula, and also the transverse cervical artery participate in the anastomosis around body of scapula. And next, from the third part of axillary artery, you get the subscapular artery. The subscapular artery gives a circumflex scapular artery branch, which is also participating in the anastomosis around body of scapula. So what are the three arteries of body of scapula? Anastomosis. The first one is suprascapular artery, next one is transverse cervical artery, next one is our circumflex scapular artery. So very easy to remember. In two of the arteries you will get the word scapula. One is suprascapular, next is circumflex scapular, another one is transverse cervical. That's it. And next we will see the body of acromion anastomosis. So in the acromion anastomosis, you are getting all the acromion branches, but from where? The first one you are getting from suprascapular acromion branch, right, which is in turn a branch of thyrocervical trunk, right, and you are getting Thoraco acromial branch, right, of acromion process, and you are getting the axillary artery third part, that is posterior circumflex humeral arteries acromial branch. So these three will form anastomosis around the acromion. So very simple, just by this simple diagram you can easily understand the axillary artery parts which are forming anastomosis either around body of scapula or acromion of scapula.